right, good evening and welcome back to ARTtech seminar. Next guest is Arvi Teikari, or known as Hempuli, who has been very active in the game jams in Finland and abroad. And one of the big titles he has made is Baba Is You, which I'm sure that most of you have heard since he received so many awards at this year's GDC. Arvi, welcome to stage.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, despite the general noisiness of the area, you can hear me, at least to an extent. I will be introducing and talking a bit about this game I made, Baba Is You. And I think what I'm going to talk about kind of ties back to some of the game jam related stuff Anna-Kaisa just talked about in the previous presentation. So expect some overlap. Anyway, I guess I should start with like who I am, at least quickly. I'm basically kind of a hobbyist turned full-time job game developer. I started making games in primary school. My friend showed me Game Maker, and we made like a game with Pac-Man and Space Invaders combined. It was a really bad project, but it was fun, and I kind of got hooked in game development after that. All my friends eventually stopped working on games, but first it was something that I really wanted to do, so I kept doing it. It was a good idea, I think, after like in hindsight. Anyway, I've been participating in a lot of game jams over the years. I think my first game jam was Ludum Dare, an online game jam, online only game jam of 48 hours. But in 2010, I visited, like 1 year after turning 18, actually, like as a kind of a becoming adult ritual thing, I went into the No More Sweden game jam in Skövde in Sweden. And it was a very good time. And since then, I've been participating a lot in game jam, mainly Nordic Game Jam and No More Sweden, as you can see on the slide. Also Ludum Dare, as mentioned. And for me, game jams have become a very important part of developing games and prototyping and coming up with new ideas and also trying out ideas that possibly do not work. And right now, I'm in a situation where some years ago I released my first commercial game, Environmental Station Alpha, which was kind of a small niche Metroidvania title. And after that, or during that, before that, at some point in my life, I ended up working on the game Noita with the Nolla Games team. You might have heard of that game. And then I have now Baba Is You. Random names of games. Try not to remember them. Baba Is You, I planned not to show gameplay because I feel that the screen is a bit small, so showcasing a game that has a lot of text on screen might be a bit difficult. So I'll explain the basic idea here, and if there's interest and if I have time, I will show a little bit of gameplay at the end of the presentation. But basically, the game is about changing the rules of the game. So you have this area, the game field, and the game field has both objects and words. And you can move around those words and those objects. It works basically like a block pushing game that you might have played on mobile or something. And the words make up rules. For example, you have the word is as a block you can move around. You have the word Baba. Baba is the main character. And you have the word you. And when you combine those, you get the rule Baba is you, which is the name of the game. And what that rule causes is that Baba, the creature on screen, it's like a cute little, maybe like a sheep or rabbit-like creature, becomes you, the player, so you're in control of Baba. Similarly, you could say that wall is stop, in which case wall would become like a solid object that Baba cannot move through, or rock is push, so you can push the rocks around, or flag is win, in which case the flag becomes the winning condition of a level. And the interesting thing, the reason why this game has gotten some positive attention is that because you can move those words around, you can change what things are. For example, Baba, the creature, is doesn't have any kind of qualities of its own. So when you say Baba is you, Baba becomes the protagonist. But you could as easily say that flag is you, in which case the flag in the level becomes you, the player. Or you could say Baba is top, in which case Baba would be the wall, and so on. That's the basic gist of the game. It's a simple idea, and I was surprised that no one else had done that before. But I guess a lot of novel ideas have that kind of quality where someone accidentally stumbles into some kind of a cool thing that seems obvious in hindsight, but just hasn't occurred to anyone else, or maybe has, but no one else has made it in a similar way before. So yeah, I made the game for the Nordic Game Jam 2017 Game Jam in Denmark, Copenhagen, or Copenhagen, Denmark, I guess would be the correct way to say it. And the theme of the jam was not there, and the theme made me think of logical operators. For example, in logic, you can say that there's the quality A, and you can say not A with nice curved symbol, which kind of inverts what A means. It's like the opposite of A. And in this case, I thought of the game where you could have ice, and ice would be something that melts when it comes into contact with lava. And the initial idea, I can't remember the exact details, but the idea was that maybe you could say that ice is not melt. You could remove the meltability of ice by using the not word. And over time, during the day after the theme was revealed at Nordic Game Jam, that idea kind of evolved into this prototype of a game where you can move around these words on a grid. I wasn't very confident in the idea at first. It sounded like something that would be cool for one thing, and after that it would be people would have seen it. It would not offer any kind of interesting ideas beyond the initial hey, this is a cool thing, you can move these words around. Also, I was pretty sure that I would run quickly into some kind of an unsolvable programming issue. But despite this kind of discouraging thoughts, I started working on the game, and during the first night of the Nordic Game Jam, the game started to gain form. And after I noticed that no immediately obvious problems arose, I kept working on the game, and people around me started noticing that, hey, that idea looks pretty cool. And that encouraged me a lot, so I kept working on the game. The Game Jam took place within 48 hours, and over that time I had this kind of basic idea. Some levels, I think 10 levels or 12 levels, I made a simple level editor so I could quickly produce more levels. And the game ended up winning the Game Jam. It was pretty cool. I had been in Nordic Game Jam for maybe 5 or 6 times before, and that was the first time I had actually won. So I think there were about 100, maybe 80 other games, or actually maybe it was even 140 games. I don't remember the exact count, but it was a big thing for me because I don't usually win Game Jams. And initially, because a lot of Game Jam games are such that they work in Game Jams. For example, they are kind of funny games that work in the kind of social environment of a Game Jam, because people will see it and people will talk with each other in real life about the game and find it funny or laugh at it. And a lot of Game Jam games are such that after the Game Jam, they're still funny, they're still amusing, they're still interesting, but there's no such similar context in which to experience the game. So they kind of become more mundane, more generic after the Game Jam. So I felt that Baba Is You's idea wouldn't really support a larger finished game, so I had initially planned not to make a full-fledged game out of it. But people were so excited about it after the Game Jam and during the Game Jam that it kind of persuaded me to make something out of it. Especially the fact that the thing that I mentioned, where there's Baba Is You, you become Baba, and you can change the who is you. You can become a different thing. The wall can be you. A rock can be you. Anything can be the player. That evoked some philosophical ideas in some players, like this kind of moving the consciousness of the player into different objects, and that was a pretty cool idea. I hadn't really thought about it, but when I heard that concept from the players of the game, it kind of made me feel that okay, this idea was special in some way. I want to keep working on it. And yeah, so I started working on the game. I had some initial design problems that I needed to solve, but over the next year, I slowly, or quickly actually, worked on things, made new stuff, polished things. And during the autumn, I felt that the game was a pretty good candidate for the Independent Games Festival, which is, as far as I know, the largest indie game developer competition there is. So I submitted Baba Is You to the IGF, as it is known, and it was nominated in 4 categories. To my surprise, there was the Best Student Game, Excellence in Design, the kind of Innovation Award, and what was the... Oh yeah, the Grand Prize. Yeah, nice. Well, I went to the United States, to San Francisco for the first time in my life last March, and ended up getting 2 of those awards, the Best Student Game and Excellence in Design. And that was pretty cool. I got to talk 2 times in front of people. That was nice. I don't get to do that often. And I was slightly sad that I didn't win the grand prize, but I guess 2 prizes was a pretty good hoard. So, well, at that point, I had been working on the game long enough that I had already plans for release. Like I wanted to make a commercial game, so the results of the Independent Games Festival didn't affect my plan for Baba Is You too much. I made some changes because I realized that okay, there's people want this game, people like this game, so I could feel more confident about the release. But mostly, I just kept on my initial plan. And the plan is that the game is going to be released this autumn. At first, I thought I would be able to finish it during the spring, but that didn't work out. The big question about this is that what happened, because people are constantly looking for innovative or original game ideas, especially in independent games. I feel that in AAA games, there's less space for innovation because there are more restrictions on what the game can do. But especially in independent games, there's this kind of constant journey to reach new innovative ideas. So it feels worthwhile to ponder how Baba Is You became a thing. Like, how did I find this original or innovative game idea? And the truth is that it was a complete accident. I had played some puzzle games before the Nordic Game Jam, and the Not There theme gave me this random idea. And those earlier puzzle games like Stephen's Sausage Roll or Snake Bird, those are indie puzzle games about pushing things, for example, sausages. And those games, combined with the theme, kind of collided in a way that gave me this random concept that I ended up making randomly, that ended up winning a competition randomly, that gave me the encouragement to make it into a full game. Like, there were a lot of these kind of random occurrences or seemingly random occurrences. I can't really take credit for a lot of what happened there. So it's not a very satisfying answer to how to make original games, but that's how it goes. And because of that, I accidentally actually forgot that final line there from an earlier version of this presentation that I gave at an actual game jam, because I'm not sure how many of the people listening to this presentation are game developers themselves. But if you are, or if you're interested, or if you're doing any kind of other kind of creative thing, I guess I want to encourage prototyping and experimenting, like throwing things together, going into events that encourage you to quickly make kind of random decisions and see what works and what doesn't, because it's very hard to systematically arrive in a new idea, but it's much easier to keep trying, make a lot of attempts. Basically, game jams are these moments where you have a short amount of time to throw things together and see what works and what doesn't. And usually it doesn't. But if you do that enough times, you might run into something interesting, which I feel is what happened with Baba Is You. So do something like that, whatever it is you do. Okay, so to kind of, I don't have much more to say about this, but to cap things off, here's like some more detail about or in more detail what I just said about like finding a novel idea. So when it comes to game development, I feel that game jams are very useful for coming up with novel ideas, especially because of what I just mentioned, the kind of thing where you make a thing quickly, you see what works, you repeat the process until you find something that is more interesting. But also because of at game jams, you don't, and other kind of like Nanovrimo, I think like the write a thing in a month event that is, I don't remember the exact month, but it's during the autumn. Events like that are useful in that you can make something from scratch. You don't have the kind of restrictions that you usually have when you're working commercially or working to make like a something that needs to succeed, when you can make something that doesn't necessarily have to become anything, because then you can leave some polish out, you can concentrate on the core idea, you can concentrate on implementing the like basics of what you want to do and see if that works. And if that works, you can, after the whatever that event is, keep working on it to make it into a full game. Especially at game jams, I feel that it's super nice not to need to concentrate on doing stuff like fixing all the bugs or adding controller support or making the graphics really nice looking, but rather just kind of get the basic idea there and see if it works. It's very satisfying, and it's very promotive of this kind of innovation, if you want to call it that. And the second point is kind of continuation of that. So you have more freedom to make experimental or ideas that don't necessarily have to work. Although I have to, like the final point there, there's definitely a thing that when you make something multiple times, when you work in games a lot, or when you work in writing a lot, or when you make art a lot, your standards start to increase slowly. So after a certain point, it becomes harder to kind of let yourself go, let yourself just kind of do something without restrictions, because even though it feels like a nice idea to, hey, I just want to make something, I don't really care if it works or not, I just want to do something, you still have those kind of intuitive or implicit, like, I don't want to make a bad thing, I want to make something that fills my standards. So you kind of, over the time, you end up in this kind of a contradicting thing where you both want to make a game or want to make something that is nice, that you can be proud of, but also want to make something that doesn't care about those kind of successfulness or other kind of qualities like that. And the other thing that kind of ties to game jams is also other kinds of prototyping. For example, with writing, it is writing short pieces and burning them afterwards if they are bad, I don't know. Or when you're drawing, when you're an artist, like drawing a lot, making sketches and burning those as well if you want to, or keeping them and looking at them later and being proud or annoyed about them. And with game development, making small games at game jams or on your own, getting a cool idea. Hey, I want to make a card game with card game with race car physics, and you make a card game where you can ride the cards around. It probably doesn't work, it's probably a bad idea, but it's a nice thing you can do and then not think about it ever again. Because all those little prototypes you do kind of add up in your mind at least. So later on you might think that, hey, I had that earlier idea that ended up not working, that I scrapped entirely. But now I have this new idea that lacks something. Maybe I can use this old idea and combine them and get something interesting. So for that reason, prototyping as a practice, no matter what you do, it doesn't have to be game development, is a good thing. And And then, of course, just kind of experience in different kinds of media is very important when it comes to finding novel ideas, because I've been doing this quotation marks when talking about innovation and original ideas, especially original ideas is something that I feel that in many fields of media have this kind of they're used to mean some kind of arbitrary thing where something is has qualities that have never been done before. And I feel that is a bad way of thinking about it, because very few things are actually something that hasn't actually really never been done before. But instead, most ideas are combinations of two existing ideas. And those two existing ideas can combine in novel ways that no one can actually very easily predict beforehand. And the result can feel original because it's not something that anyone has thought about before. But at its basis, it's still two existing ideas that have been combined, or more existing ideas that have been combined. For example, many roguelike games, for example, I guess Spelunky is a game that many people might know. It's a game that combines platforming games and roguelike, this kind of permanent death, having to start over every time, procedurally generated world and whatever. And before Spelunky, no one had combined this kind of platforming elements with this kind of procedural generation. Nowadays, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the genre of roguelikes, but if you are, the idea of like platforming and this kind of procedural generation might feel very commonplace or familiar to you. But in 2009, I think, or 10, when Spelunky first came out, it was the first of its kind. It combined two existing ideas in ways that ended up creating a whole new subgenre. So I feel that is a very good example of this kind of not thinking in terms of originality, but rather than combining ideas. And also I feel that experiencing other kinds of media as the final point is useful just in the sense that when you work on something, it can be very easy to get into this kind of mindset of needing to find something new, needing to figure out the new thing, wanting to kind of push yourself to come up with something interesting. And that can be useful in some situation. It can be useful to force yourself to spend time on something. But over the time, obviously, it becomes exhausting. You can get a burnout. You can, like crunch is the term that is used in many fields to describe the kind of thing where you work on something, you kind of force yourself to work on something for a long time, and you get burnout, you get exhausted, you start to hate what you're doing, you get actual like a mental exhaustion that can lead to a lot of very, very bad things. So getting a break from things can be very both helpful for your inspiration, for your kind of ideas, but also helpful for your mental health in general, or your physical health in general. So I feel that if you want to get like a fresh viewpoint to things, taking breaks, for example, as a game developer, watching movies or having like a holiday trip somewhere where you see interesting sites that can be used as an inspiration is very important. But I guess all of this is pretty commonplace, like easily reasonable knowledge that most people agree with. But I kind of wanted to add it to the end because I wanted to take the presentation slightly away from just talking about game jams and game developer or indie game development, but talk also more about innovation in or novel ideas in other fields. But anyway, with Baba Is You, I kind of stumbled into a novel idea. It happened to work. There were some factors that helped, but mostly I can just point out these little random things that I keep doing that maybe helped, maybe didn't. I want to think they helped, but it's anyone's guess what actually happened. But I'm happy about the game, and it's going to be released this autumn, so I'm pretty sure it will be well received, but we'll see what happens. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, or would you want to see the game in action?
How about we have the game in action?
There seem to be at least one. Okay. Yeah.
Show it.
All right. So let's show the game in action. I was told not to do this. I was told to have the game ready already, but I kind of assumed that I wouldn't be showing it, so it happens. I also promised not to have sound, so let's not have sound. It's not reacting to my key presses. Sorry about breaking my promises, but it seems that the game doesn't want to work with us. Okay, well, whatever. The game will be coming this autumn, so I guess we'll be able to see it later. I guess this is a proof that you shouldn't break your promises that you make for the organizers of an event, because then you end up with technical difficulties.
Well, this is a typical demo effect. That's how we will roll. So, the question. Okay. So, the request was to see the game.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from the audience? No.
Okay.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. We are very much looking forward to the game.
Yeah, actually, as a final thing, because I couldn't show the game here, if you go to itch.io, the website, you are able to download for free the original Game Jam version, which is very bare bones, but showcases the idea of the game. I hope I managed to explain the idea well enough, but if you actually want to see the game in action, I feel that that might be the best bet. Or maybe seeing the trailer on YouTube, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, thank you.